We had some good feedback from the Radio Waves DX40. The 30 days. We did the 30 days. We released a podcast this week. Doing quite well for our podcast listeners. They get everything first on the audio side, and I'll piece it out there as on the YouTube as we go. But a lot of good feedback and some questions about off-center feds. Really, I thought it'd be a good idea to talk a little bit about that 4-to-1 balun, the long element, the short element. Steve, you want to talk a little bit about the off-center fed? They are calling it a Wyndham. They're calling that antenna a Wyndham.
Yeah, that's
You want
what
to
it
talk
is.
about it?
I mean, yeah, it's a Wyndham, and the original Wyndham was uh, basically think of it as three wires, and so you had a short wire, and then you had a long wire, and then you had the third wire, which currently now is our coax, and that came into the shack, and so that was the original off-center fed. It wasn't a dipole; it was just a three-legged wire antenna, and but as time went on, they they went to running coax, and then how it came about, I don't know. I have to do some research who the first person that or persons that developed the off-center fed with using the 4-to-1 balun. And so a dipole is a monoband antenna, basically. So when you feed it, at the half, in the center of at the quarter wavelengths, that you have an impedance that is around 72 ohms, which is close to 50 ohm coax. So this is where we get the match. But that's a monoband antenna. So obviously we want to have an antenna that works everything. So someone has turned around and developed the off-center fed dipole, figuring out, well, we'll go to an impedance point that's 200 ohms, and we found that, hey, we got multiple bands that work and resonate, and hence where we came up with the off-center fed dipole. Now there is, I've seen different percentages of the short versus the long. I've built a few different ones based on different percentages, and then sweep them and see, okay, how's this faring, or okay, this is good. And it ended up truly becoming when I was doing all this, it became the compromise, and it was like, oh, okay, well, if I go with this, then it works better over here or there. But it was a little poor performance, or I didn't like the results at this band versus this band. So it and that's kind of where the off center fed. Then the Carolina Wyndham, which is an off center fed dipole, they changed the balun from a current balun, which kept all the RF for the most part on the wires. They used a voltage balun, and the way the voltage balun works, it allows RF to come back down the feed line. So they took a short piece of coax to utilize that as part of the radiating element, and then put a current balun at the end of that section of coax, whether it was 22 feet or 10 feet, depending on which, if it was Wyndham 80 or Carolina Wyndham 80 or Carolina Wyndham 40, then that kept the RF up at the antenna. So kind of different designs that kind of came up, and how they implemented it. But in a nutshell, an off-center fed dipole is more a multi-band antenna versus a dipole, which is a monoband antenna.
Cool. Thank you for that, Steve. Appreciate that. If you have a question about off-center fed dipoles, or you're interested in hearing the review, it's a peer review system where 4 operators were sent the antenna. Now, they weren't, Radio Waves did not send them out. The show purchased these antennas and sent them out to 4 people who had their name picked in a lottery. Basically, if you have a 100-watt ID, you can register to be a reviewer in the peer review system. I have nothing to do with it. Steve has nothing to do with it. We don't give you our feedback. And if you listen to that podcast, you'll see I'm the point guard. They are the ones who tested it for 30 days, and they give you that honest review. So check that out. And coming up this week, I'll put some of the clips up there, which are valuable to our podcast audience to go back and reference if you want to see the installs. For complete episodes, subscribe where you get podcasts and click the bell here on YouTube for features and live streams.